when my husband Ryan sits down and he reads an entire book in only 3 days, I pay attention closely. In our 10 years of marriage, I think I can remember him reading 2 books total. So when he got Roy Williams' autobiography for Christmas and finished it just 3 days later, I picked it up the second he was done. And for those of you who aren't sports fans, Roy Williams is one of the most respected and successful coaches in college basketball. He currently coaches at the University of North Carolina, and he is, which is a very storied and high caliber program. And I don't know if anyone knows me, but I am a sports junkie. I always have been. I played basketball until my sophomore year in college when an injury ended my playing career, but I am an avid sports lover. In fact, it's not uncommon to walk into our house and see SportsCenter on the TV, or if you happen to my pink Cadillac, it's likely that ESPN Radio is going to be playing. I love Mike and Mike in the morning! Does anybody know Mike and Mike? Oh, okay, in fact, one of our most and only arguments in our home between Ryan and I is that, and he's an athletic director and a coach, and he always is changing the channel to another program while I'm trying to watch the game. I'm like, I was watching the game, and he's trying to watch some 80s chick flick. You know, so we always argue about that. But there are so many parallels between what we do and Mary Kay, especially at the college level. And so I really enjoyed Coach Williams' book, and I'm going to use some of the things that I learned in his book to tell you my Mary Kay story. The first thing that I learned from Coach Williams is that there is always risk involved in significant life change. Always. You will never fulfill your dreams or really change your destiny without taking a risk. Can I get an agreement on that? Yes, there's always risk. And one of the most memorable parts of his story for me was that after graduating from the University of North Carolina, where he now coaches, he got his first coaching job at a high school near where he grew up. And the program that he took over, it was totally in the tanks. And his first years of coaching, they were far from great. In fact, in his first 5 seasons as a high school coach, his record was 45-68. Hardly signs of future greatness. In the summers, he worked basketball camps at the University of North Carolina, and he really earned the respect of their legendary coach, Dean Smith. Now, one day, the last day of a summer camp, Dean Smith approached Roy Williams and offered him a job. He explained that because it was a part-time position, he would earn a whopping $2,700 a year, but he would be working full-time coaching hours. In addition, he'd have to leave the basketball program that he had been building, quit his teaching job where he was earning close to $30,000 a year, and he had a 15-month-old son and a brand new house that they would have to leave. And guess what he did? He took the risk. When Mary Kay entered my life 23 years ago, it was simply because my mom took a risk. At the time, she was teaching high school English and felt she was making a difference in the lives of her students. However, one day in August of 1989, she came home from getting her nails done. I'm sorry if I'm stealing your speech later. I just realized I'm telling her story too.
It was 88. It was 88, get it straight.
Oh, 88. Sorry. Anyhow, she came home from getting her nails done with a videotape in her purse, given to her by the woman who drove the pink Cadillac and had a standing appointment right before my mom. Now, I was in 6th grade at the time, and I remember the VHS tape, some of you don't even know what that is, playing on the kitchen VCR. And a woman with bleach blonde hair with very big and bright red lipstick, I think it was Rena Tarbett, actually, talked about the Mary Kay business opportunity. And my sister and I thought it was quite possibly the weirdest thing we had ever seen. So we rolled our teenage eyes and we walked out of the room, but my mom was intrigued. And the next day, Executive Senior Sales Director Nadine Bowers showed up at our house in that pink Cadillac, wearing a black leather outfit with huge gold accessories. And she sat in our living room with my mom, who was in jean shorts, I remember that too, who had written a huge list of questions about the business on a yellow legal pad. Now, clearly, all of you know that I'm the daughter of the now National Sales Director, Jeannie Martin, but you might not know this. I am actually the person who started her entire business. Because this is true story. I sat on her bed 22 years ago. Now, I'm a super analytical, detailed person, and if you know my mom, none of those things is she. And I put together her starter kit when it arrived at our house. She was like, oh, do that. I don't know what that is, but do that. And then he went down to the starter kit. It used to open. It was like really a showcase. My mom still says showcase. I'm like, oh, it's not a showcase. But she said that. So you open it, and there were like hundreds of little tubes. Yes, and they would swing back and forth when you open the door. I put it together. So without me, technically, my mom's whole national area would not be in existence today. But in all seriousness, I do remember as a junior high age girl and then into high school what I would call snapshots of my mom's Mary Kay business. Overwhelmingly, I remember the table experiences. She probably had thousands of women come to our home in her 23 years with Mary Kay to experience Mary Kay products. And in those beginning years, I used to sit in her office, which was close to where she would do her skincare classes, because that's where the computer was. And I would watch and kind of half listen. And often I was called into the room when they got to the part about formula-free skincare because I had the worst skin ever. So she'd say, Amy, come in and tell them about your zitty, oily skin and what you use. She didn't use those words, but essentially that's what she was doing. So I would come in and say, I have to use the blemish control toner twice a day, and all of that. So I do remember that for sure. I remember this one night, she closed the front door after her last guest from a skincare class left, and she just went, whoa! Like she yelled really loud because Susan Parks, one of her hostesses had just become her very first team member. I remember her working one summer while she was on summer break from teaching to complete a 10-show week, and I remember the plaque she received and where it hung on the wall in her office. I remember her coming home from seminar just loaded with loot, like pictures and rings and sashes and ribbons and jewelry. And I remember that she'd work with renewed passion and energy after those events. I remember taking a trip to Europe for 2 weeks, a year after my mom started her business, something we never would have done before Mary Kay. And I remember that trip to Europe gave me the courage then, later in college, to spend a semester in Spain, where I studied in Salamanca. I remember my mom picking up her first pink Cadillac, pretending like I thought it was dumb, but then going to school and bragging about it to all of my friends. I remember that my mom had a clear apple that sat on her desk, and it was filled with Mary Kay quotes. Did anyone else have an apple that's been in Mary Kay? Some people remember. And I would steal them for my goal posters or for things that I would put together for our sports teams. And I would read, there was a book that was in a binder, it was pink, and it had Mary Kay stories on it. And I would read that, and I would take some out that I wanted to keep. She would get mad at me because I would take them. But I remember that those table experiences and those things, they created lots of laughter and lots of chatter, but I do remember that mostly they changed my mom. And that when my mom changed, so did our family. And it didn't happen overnight, but year after year, as she gathered those women around those mirrors in our basement, my mom became more confident. And she believed in herself more. And she had more energy. And she had more enthusiasm. And that had a direct impact on me. And I will believe, until the day that I die, that if you are a mom and you want to change your children's lives, the best way that you can do that is to change your own. And if you want to change your own life and you're a part of Mary Kay, then the best way to do that is by doing a whole bunch of skincare classes. And when I started my Mary Kay business 10 years ago, I was far from the confident leader that stands before you now. In fact, I was at a low point in my high school teaching career. I was working for a principal who I still believe he was way shorter than me, and I think he really didn't like that. But he was way less than affirming of my work. He was nearing retirement, and I just think my height and my passion and my energy, they were just very irritating to him. And I was also tired and burnt out from coaching basketball and volleyball, finishing my master's degree, and even as Ryan and I worked long hours, his Catholic teaching salary and my teaching salary, it just didn't leave much left after the bills were paid. In fact, you might be surprised to know that when I started my business 9 years ago, my mom would not even talk to me about inventory because she said that she knew too much about our financial situation to present the options fairly. And after going through them with her good friend Celine, she's a sister sales director, I convinced Ryan that we should borrow the money for my first order, and at that point I should have known I would be really good in sales. Because I will never forget, we were sitting in this credit union, taking out that loan, and my hands were shaking, and there was this brown desk and these fluorescent lights, and we signed all of these forms, and then when my order arrived, things got even more exciting. I sat on the living room floor in our little 1,000-square-foot house, and I was surrounded by packing peanuts and all these products, and I bawled my eyes out. I was bawling because I just didn't know what in the world I was going to do with all of this stuff. And I am sure that if you all would have seen me on the floor amid the packing peanuts, you would have thought, there is the top director. I mean, I was a hot mess. It was brutal. And here's the thing. As Roy Williams proved in his story, and as my Mary Kay journey has proven, your life will not change if you don't take a risk at some point. Now, the second reason I love the Roy Williams story could be summarized in the title, which is called hard work. And you might have heard others say it this way: you've got to be willing to do what others won't if you want to live like others don't. This is the most important thing, you sometimes just have to be willing to look foolish if you want to live the life of your dreams. And as I told you, the first season after he took the assistant coaching job at North Carolina, he basically worked full-time for part-time pay, so he had to work lots of odd jobs to provide for his family. And he said that he had 5 jobs in his first year just to make ends meet. He ran a basketball camp, he did all these goofy jobs, and one of the things he did was drive tapes to the local television station on Sundays, and he said, I drove 504 miles every Sunday and made $113 per trip minus the money I spent on gas. That was what I did on my day off. And so he did that. There were countless examples when he was willing to put himself out there and just look foolish, and he was willing to make the efforts long before anyone watched or cared or noticed. And the fact is, when no one else was looking, and no one thought that Roy Williams would one day be one of the premier coaches in college basketball, he did a lot of work that people would be unwilling to do. And sometimes he looked downright silly. So talk about carry over to your Mary Kay business. Today, my job looks so glamorous. I got to fly to Oklahoma City to speak to one of the most well-respected and admired national areas in all of Mary Kay. I get to wear patent leather boots and this black cute dress, and I will tell you that the reason that I get to stand on this stage today is because when no one cared and no one was watching, when I had 32 people in my unit, we were barely making it, and yet still today when no one is looking, I often do things that others won't do. And I can tell you hilarious stories about facials and classes that I've done that you would never believe, but this is my favorite one. So 7 years ago, I drove 20 miles to a referral's home in Bonfield, Illinois. There's like 400 people who live in Bonfield. Now, I never met her, but I kind of thought this could be a little interesting when I heard an array of barking and animal noises when I rang the doorbell. So there were interesting noises. I walked into her home. The smell of my animals was just overwhelming. She had something like, I made her tell me, 6 cats, 4 4 dogs, birds, cages with hamsters and rabbits and other creatures. And there were fish and lizards and aquariums lining the walls. Now, I am not a huge lover of animals. Like, I wouldn't even take 2 goldfish my grandma was trying to give me last week. Like, if it's living other than my 3 children and my husband, I don't want it in my house, okay? So I removed a cat from the chair. I sat down and I started the facial, and I'm squirting her foundation into her tray when something furry and like the size of a large rat goes whoosh, like right in front of us, like in between us, you know, right between us. And I seriously thought about just picking up my bags and just running out the door as fast as I could because I didn't know what it was. And she was like, "Oh, it's just my flying squirrel." Here's the greatest part of the story. I sold a travel roll-up bag. I finished it, sold the travel roll-up bag, and she is still a faithful client today, but I have never gone back to her house. In fact, I've told this story to my consultants, and she recently came to an event that we did at our training center, and she's wonderful, like hugs me. We've been friends now for a while. And after they left, I was like, "That's the flying squirrel." I've held so many facials in classes where I sold $0. I mean, I've held classes where after giving away free product, I didn't make a penny. I've had people not show up. Just this past Friday night, I did a class, and during the individual closes, I think the animals know I don't like them. I had to sit on the floor to do the individual closes, and this little white dog was licking my feet the whole time. And so it's just, but what I see is that it looks so glamorous from the stage, but then the dog's licking your feet, you think, "For real? This is what I'm doing," And so many people just do that, and they say, "Enough, I'm done." And this is the thing, you miss out on so much when you give up. It's when you back off and when you decide that it's not worth it, and when you aren't willing to put up with the dippy parts of our work, then you just miss out on so many rewards. So what price are you willing to pay? Are you willing to look foolish? Are you willing to do what others won't so that you can live like others don't? So the last lesson that I learned from Coach Williams is that when you're working to achieve a huge goal, and when you want to do something that normal people will never do, there will be moments when even you think you're crazy. Like in those times, but here's the key thing, in those times when you're doubting and when you're unsure of yourself, you have to choose, this is your choice, what voices do you listen to? In the moments when you're unsure and doubting and feeling like this might be crazy, what voices do you listen to? And I was shocked to find out that Roy Williams was offered and accepted his first head coaching job at Kansas. And when he did that, he was paralyzed with fear. In fact, the night after he accepted the job, he barely slept. In the morning, he threw up. Then, right before meeting with the chancellor of the university, he threw up. Then, after meeting with the booster, he threw up again. And then after the press conference and an interview with local media, he threw up again. And he was so scared. And you guys, this is what he'd been working for his whole life. So why would he be afraid when he got there? I was just like, what? And here's the real key. What did he do in those moments of fear? Who did he go to for advice? He called his mentor and his coach. He had learned everything from, the legendary Dean Smith. And he said he'll never forget their conversation. He said, "Coach, Kansas is your alma mater. Larry Brown is just their coach, and they just won the national championship. Are you sure that I should do this? Are you sure that I can do this?" And Roy Williams said he'd remember Coach Smith's response until the day he dies. He said, "Let me tell you something. You can be just as good a coach as Larry Brown. Don't forget that. You just do what's right, and it'll work out." And as I read that story, I thought back to times when I've been most afraid in my Mary Kay business and who I went to in those moments of doubt and uncertainty. For sure, I was scared when I started as a new consultant. I was scared to death when I went on target for my first car. I I was terrified the first time I was asked to teach in an event, and then again when I became a new sales director, and I just felt scared a lot. And maybe it's just me, but every time there was a change, it brought with it just a touch of nervousness. And then I had another realization. Anytime I've really experienced growth or done something significant with my business, I've been scared. And I can especially remember being petrified as a new director, like, would anybody come to my meetings, and could I do this while being a new mom? And I can remember being scared when we earned our first Cadillac. I mean, I told so many people that I was going to win that Cadillac that my mom had a whole strategy about how she was going to pick me off the floor when I didn't make it, because she thought, what in the world am I going to do if she doesn't make it? I mean, I was so sold out on that goal. And I don't know if I slept the whole month of June, and I got irritable bowel syndrome, which was horrible. That was horrible, and I can remember that so vividly. And there's been so many times where I didn't know where the sales were going to come from, or the orders, or the new people. And guess what? Don't tell anyone. But just between you, me, and 350 of you, I'm scared now. Because I don't always know how to lead 3 offspring sales directors. And I don't know how to build a national area. And I really do believe that we will be $1 million unit, but I'm not really sure how I'm going to make that happen. And sometimes it just feels awfully uncomfortable and awkward. And maybe, just maybe, part of the key to success is just to always be a little scared and uncomfortable. What do you think? So I'll also ask this important question to remind you, when you're scared, who do you go to for advice? See, one of the advantages of having your mom as your senior sales director in your national is that when I'm doubting myself and unsure, I go to my mom and she tells me to go to work. I mean, who do you talk to when you're feeling unsure? Do you ask your mom, who tells you that you don't need to be stressing yourself out like this? Do you ask a friend in Mary Kay who isn't really working and let her tell you why the business isn't working for her either? Or do you ask your sales director? Or do you ask your national? Do you ask someone who has been there and done that and who believes in you implicitly and who won't let you off the hook? So I'd like to close my class with this message today. When Stacy asked me a couple of weeks ago what my greatest hope for the future was, I told her that what I can see right now is that I want to do million. I want our unit to be $1 million unit. And I don't want to do million for the money or the recognition or the prizes or the perks, but I want the platform and the stage and the level of influence that comes with that achievement, because I do believe that I have a unique message to share with the Mary Kay world. And this is the main lesson that I've learned from watching my mom build a Mary Kay business and then from building my own. So several years ago, we were at a leadership conference, and Pastor John Ortberg said something that I'll never forget, and that you'll probably hear me say many, many, many times before I retire from Mary Kay. And his exact words were this. I still can't always say it without getting teary, but he said, if you are a woman, and God has given you the gift of leadership, then for God's sake, lead. He said, if you are a woman, and I was like, I'm a woman, and God has given you the gift of leadership, and I thought, I know he has. And then he said, for God's sake, lead. And it resonates so deeply inside of me because I've seen firsthand the impact that obedience to this statement can have on your family. Lead. Create what God is asking you to create. Don't hide behind tasks that protect you from rejection and struggle. It takes a strong sense of knowing who you are and a strong sense of purpose and a strong vision to say no to things that are not your gifts so that you can use the gifts that you have been given. Because at the end of my life, I want to stand before my Creator and hear him say, well done, good and faithful servant. You used the gifts and talents that I gave you. See, I don't want him to say, gosh, you made your life look just like everyone else's. I'm so glad that you fit in and that you weren't too uncomfortable. So lead, you guys, because the cost to those around you if you don't is way too high. Take a risk. Be willing to look foolish and do what others won't. Use the unique gifts that God has given you. And let's together make the rest of this seminar year the best ever. Thank you.